tell my mommy on my birthday, Granny, why on my birthday? What do I say? I just gotta let them say what they need to say.
It's every parent's worst nightmare, your child's birthday turning into a bloodbath. That's exactly what happened on September 12th, 2024, in a quiet Houston neighborhood when 25-year-old Jalen Whitlock Easterling was shot and killed right in front of her two young daughters. The worst part? This wasn't some random act of violence. It was a brutal reminder of the horror she had been trying to escape for years. Jalin had just finished throwing a party for her 6-year-old, the kind of day meant to be filled with cake, balloons, and laughter. But instead of celebrating, she found herself face to face with her ex, 27-year-old Jalin J. Foreman. She'd told him not to show up, told him to stay away. But Foreman didn't care. He showed up anyway, dropping off presents and trying to push his way into her life once again. What happened next was terrifying. An argument erupted between Foreman and Jalen's new boyfriend. Words were exchanged, threats were made, and it didn't take long for the situation to escalate. Foreman, known for his violent temper, left the scene, but not for long. He came back, and when he did, he wasn't empty-handed. "We're going to end this now," he screamed as he pulled the trigger. Gunshots rang out. In an instant, the noise that should have been a celebration, laughter, kids running around, was replaced with screams, chaos, and the sound of a mother's final defiance. "I'm not scared of you." Those were Jalen's last words before the shot rang out. And with that, everything she'd worked for was gone. What made him snap? Why did he return to her home, prepared to end it all? Why end a mother's life just like that? The worst part was that she was 10 weeks pregnant. Stay with us, because the truth is more shocking than you think. Welcome to Hidden Crime Network, where we explore the most shocking true crime stories. Stories that don't just entertain, but force us to confront the uncomfortable truths of the world we live in. These are the stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. The betrayals, the secrets, the pain that no one should ever have to experience. If you're here, it's because you know these stories matter. They matter not just for the victims, but for all of us. But here's the thing. If you believe that stories like Jalen's should never be forgotten, don't just sit back. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This is about spreading awareness, making sure the truth is heard. Every bit of support helps get these stories to the people who need to hear them. And while you're here, drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. The more we speak up, the harder it is to ignore the violence, the manipulation, and the heartbreak that's still happening every day. Stay with us. You won't want to miss where this story leads, because the twists are darker than you think. Jalen Whitlock Easterling was a 25-year-old woman whose life was tragically cut short in the most violent and senseless way. Known for her unwavering devotion to her two young daughters, aged 6 and 4, Jalen's world revolved around giving them a brighter future. Those who knew her, like her cousin Ashlyn McBride, described her as the most caring and compassionate person you could ever know. Her gentle nature and warmth touched everyone who crossed her path, leaving an indelible impact on her family and friends. Jalin was more than just a mother. She was a loving daughter, sister, and friend. Despite the hardships she faced, Jalin had big dreams for her future and the future of her children. Tragically, the pursuit of that future was marred by the constant shadow of domestic violence. Jalin had been separated from her children's father, 27-year-old Jalin J. Foreman, for roughly 3 years. However, this separation did little to end the abuse. For years, Jalin had fought a relentless battle to free herself from Foreman's control and violence. His behavior escalated to stalking, harassment, and repeated threats. She sought help time and time again, filing countless reports to authorities, hoping for intervention, but each time she thought she was safe, the violence returned. On top of it all, Jalin was 10 weeks pregnant at the time of her death, a detail that only deepened the tragedy. The loss of one life was horrific enough, but the loss of two, Jalin and the unborn child, felt like an unbearable blow to her family. Foreman's abuse was not new. Jalin had endured violence before. He had fired shots at her home in previous incidents, and the authorities had responded to numerous child custody calls. Despite the police involvement, the abuse continued, escalating to the fatal shooting that would end Jalen's life. Jalen's family tried everything they could to protect her, But the system failed to keep her safe from the violence she had desperately tried to escape. Her death wasn't just the end of a mother's life. It was the tragic, irreversible loss of a woman who deserved far more than the terror she lived through. Alright, just as usual, it's time for our detective challenge. So far, we've dropped a few key pieces of the puzzle, and now we want you to join us and figure out what set this tragedy in motion. Can you connect the dots? Let's take a step back and see what we know so far. Jalin had been separated from her ex, Jalin J. Foreman, for 3 years, but the abuse didn't stop. He had already fired shots at her house before, and had shown up uninvited multiple times. The night of the murder, she was hosting a birthday party for her daughter when Foreman arrived, unannounced, and started a confrontation with her boyfriend. After a brief argument, Foreman left the scene, only to return moments later with one clear goal. We're going to end this now. So, what do you think caused him to snap that night? Was it jealousy? Was it something about the boyfriend? Or was Foreman's control slipping away? Pause the video if you need to, and head to the comments to drop your theory. Let's see if you can crack this before we reveal the chilling details that were uncovered. Jalin J. Foreman, 27, was no stranger to conflict. The father of Jalen Whitlock's 2 young children, Foreman's relationship with Jalin had ended 3 years before her tragic death, but the separation did little to stop his abusive behavior. Raised in an environment where control and manipulation seemed to be a constant, Foreman's actions showed a deeply ingrained pattern of violence. This was not the first time he had used intimidation and aggression to assert power over Jalin. From June 2023, tensions between Jalin and Foreman had been steadily rising. The issues between them weren't just personal, they were wrapped up in child custody disputes that became increasingly volatile. Foreman had a history of using his children to maintain a grip on Jalin, a tactic often seen in abusive relationships where the abuser uses parental rights to manipulate and control. These custody battles weren't simply legal conflicts, they were emotional and physical confrontations that put Jalin on edge. This escalating violence wasn't new. Foreman had already made his presence known through several violent incidents, including firing shots at Jalin's townhouse in the past. Neighbors and friends recalled a man who had no hesitation to use threats and intimidation. The police had been called on multiple occasions to intervene in disputes between Foreman and Jalin, often in response to issues with child custody. Yet, despite these repeated interventions, Foreman's behavior continued to spiral out of control. On the night of the shooting, Foreman's actions were a culmination of years of escalating abuse. His taunts and threats toward Jalin's new boyfriend, combined with his history of violent outbursts, showed that his mind was set on one thing: regaining control, no matter the cost. The fatal shooting was not a random act. It was the tragic climax of a long, destructive history of manipulation, violence, and obsession. It was a night that should have been filled with laughter, but instead, it ended in bloodshed. On September 12, 2024, Jalen Whitlock Easterling had invited friends and family over for her daughter's 6th birthday. But as balloons were inflated and the cake was sliced, a chilling presence loomed at the door. Jalin's ex, Jalin J. Foreman, was standing there, despite being told not to show up. He arrived with the guise of dropping off gifts for the children. But something in his eyes told a different story. Jalin's boyfriend answered the door, and what should have been a quick exchange of presents quickly escalated into a verbal confrontation. Foreman didn't back down. He taunted Jalin's boyfriend, throwing out threats with alarming ease. "I'm going to shoot you," he said, a statement that hung in the air with a terrifying finality. Jalin's children, still unaware of the looming danger, rushed down the stairs to greet their father, eager to get their birthday presents. But the tension between the men was rising fast. As the argument between Foreman and the boyfriend grew, the situation became unbearable. Jalin's boyfriend, sensing the immediate threat, retreated inside to grab a gun for protection. Foreman stormed off in a hurry, but his anger wasn't satisfied. He went to his car, only to return moments later, this time with a chilling declaration: "We're going to end this now." The violence was imminent. A few seconds later, shots rang out, cutting through the evening air. If you're watching this and think this could have been prevented, share this video. Jalin tried to escape this nightmare, but the system failed her. Someone else needs to hear her story, so this doesn't keep happening. The chaos erupted in an instant. The birthday party Jalin had organized for her daughter, filled with joy and laughter, transformed into a scene of terror. Jalin, standing in her doorway, exchanged heated words with Foreman, who had just returned to the house. His intentions were clear now. The man who had terrorized her life for years wasn't there to drop off gifts. He was there for a violent confrontation. In the midst of their argument, Jalen's defiance rang through the tension-filled air. "I'm not scared of you," she shouted, confronting the monster she had feared for so long. But her voice, filled with the strength of a mother, could not protect her from what came next. Foreman raised his gun and fired. The sound of the gunshot cracked the night air like thunder. 5 shots rang out, each one striking a terrifying blow to the sense of safety and love Jalin had tried to build for herself and her children. The violence was swift, and in a moment of sheer desperation, Jalen's boyfriend tried to shield her from the barrage of bullets. As he rushed back to the door with his own weapon, Foreman's relentless assault continued. Jalin, aware of the danger, instinctively grabbed her daughters, ushering them to safety, trying to protect them from the horror unfolding right in front of them. But it was too late. The gunfire continued for what felt like an eternity before it finally stopped. When it did, Jalin lay on the floor, her life slowly fading away. She had fought until the very end. The strength she had shown, even in her final moments, was a testament to the woman she had always been, a protector, a mother, and a survivor. Yet, even her bravery couldn't stop Foreman from taking everything from her. The aftermath of the shooting was immediate and chaotic. Jalen's boyfriend rushed to her side as she lay on the floor, struggling to stay conscious. In the midst of the confusion, he managed to push the children upstairs, telling them to stay in their rooms as he tried desperately to stop the bleeding. Neighbors, who had already heard the shots, reacted quickly. Felicia Adams, one of the residents nearby, had witnessed the confrontation and was horrified as the gunfire rang out. She immediately dialed 911, her voice shaking with fear. "My heart dropped," she said later.
Oh man, my heart dropped. I was terrified. Scary. My kids, they were terrified. I have a 5-year-old and she wouldn't stop crying yesterday.
It was so loud, it sounded like it was coming right through my house. She and her children huddled together in the upstairs window, watching the chaos unfold as the police and emergency responders were called to the scene. When the police arrived, they found Jalin unresponsive, her body lying in a pool of blood. The paramedics rushed to her side, but it was clear she was beyond saving. The brutal reality of the situation set in. A mother had been murdered, and her 2 children had witnessed the violence. As the police began to secure the scene, they found a crucial piece of evidence, surveillance footage from a nearby home. The footage clearly captured the entire incident. Foreman's arrival, the argument that escalated quickly, the gunfire, and his hasty departure. This footage would become a pivotal part of the investigation, offering undeniable proof of Foreman's actions. But for the family, the video offered no comfort. There was no footage that could bring Jalin back or erase the trauma her children had endured. The sudden, violent loss of Jalen Whitlock Easterling left a hole in the hearts of those who loved her, a gap that will never fully heal. The trauma of that night, where Jalen's life was brutally cut short in front of her 2 young daughters, rippled outwards to every corner of her family. Jalen's 2 young daughters were left to carry the weight of a nightmare no child should ever experience. The older of the 2, just 6 years old, struggled to comprehend the horror she had witnessed. Her question, "Why did Daddy kill Mommy on my birthday, Granny? Why on my birthday?" captured the raw confusion and pain that no child should be burdened with. A birthday, supposed to be a day of joy, was now forever tainted by a violent tragedy. This was not just the loss of a mother, it was the loss of innocence, and it came wrapped in a layer of sorrow that would follow them for the rest of their lives. Jalen's mother, Tamara Whitlock, found herself thrust into a situation no parent should ever have to endure. Devastated by the loss of her daughter, she now faced the impossible task of raising 2 grieving granddaughters, suddenly without either parent. The shock and grief Tamara felt were overwhelming, and yet, she had no choice but to gather the strength to care for the children Jalin loved so fiercely. Tamara was now their protector, their source of comfort in a world that had become unrecognizable. Jalen's family, already drowning in grief, also found themselves fighting for the future of Jalen's children. Her cousin, Ashlyn McBride, organized a GoFundMe campaign, a heartbroken mother's plea, helping Jalen's children thrive. This fundraiser was an attempt to ease the financial burden the family now faced as they navigated the devastating emotional toll and the new realities of life without Jalen. It wasn't just about finances, though. It was a rallying cry, a statement to the world that Jalen's children and the family that had been left behind deserved to be supported. In the midst of this turmoil, the community also rallied around Jalen's family, offering whatever support they could. Neighbors, who had witnessed the shooting from their windows, stepped forward, not just as bystanders, but as active participants in the fight for justice. Law enforcement, though struggling to piece together all the details, continued to urge anyone with information to come forward. As Jalen's family navigated this devastating loss, they were left with the painful realization that no amount of support could ever undo the damage caused by the loss of such a vital force in their lives. The void left by Jalen's absence would remain, but they could at least ensure that her children's future wasn't lost as well. After the violent events on September 12, 2024, Jalin J. Foreman's fate seemed uncertain for a few days. As news spread of the brutal shooting that had taken Jalen Whitlock Easterling's life in front of her two young daughters, the hunt for Foreman intensified. But despite the mounting pressure, Foreman remained elusive, a fugitive hiding from the law, from the justice that was long overdue. However, on Monday, September 16, 2024, just 4 days after the shooting, Foreman did something that caught many by surprise. He walked into the Houston Police Department and surrendered. The man who had shattered a family and a community, who had taken the life of a woman, a mother, now stood in front of officers, facing the reality of his actions. At the time of his surrender, Foreman was formally charged with murder. His arrest came shortly after police confirmed that surveillance footage had captured the entire incident. The images of Foreman arriving at the scene, engaging in a verbal altercation with Jalen's boyfriend, and ultimately opening fire on her home left no room for doubt. The clear video evidence pointed directly to him as the perpetrator. Following his surrender, Foreman was booked into the Harris County Jail. His bond was set at $1 million, a reflection of the severity of the crime he was accused of committing. The case quickly entered the judicial system, with the 178th State District Court taking the lead in overseeing the proceedings. For Jalen's family, there was little solace in his arrest. While Foreman would now face justice, the wounds left behind by his actions would never heal. The legal battle ahead offered some hope for accountability, but it could never replace the vibrant life that had been so ruthlessly taken. In the wake of Jalen Whitlock Easterling's tragic death, the impact on the community is undeniable. While the pain of losing a loved one never fully dissipates, the outpouring of support from those who knew Jalen, her family, and even strangers has been a testament to the love and resilience that binds people together in times of grief. From neighbors to local residents, the tragedy struck a deep chord, with many pledging to ensure that Jalen's children receive the support they need to grow and thrive despite the unimaginable loss they've endured. Jalen's family, led by her mother Tamara Whitlock, has shown incredible strength in the face of this devastating tragedy. While Tamara's life has been upended by the loss of her daughter, she now shoulders the immense responsibility of raising her granddaughters. With the support of her community, they are taking steps to ensure the children are provided for, both emotionally and financially, through GoFundMe campaigns and other local initiatives. As Jalen's story unfolds in the legal system, the community stands firm in its call for justice. Jalen's death, occurring during what was supposed to be a joyful celebration of her child's birthday, has sparked an urgent conversation about the ever-present threat of domestic violence in households across the country. This case is a painful reminder that we must do more to protect victims from escalating abuse and ensure that the systems meant to protect them do not fail. As we reflect on this story, let's remember the importance of empathy, vigilance, and support for those affected by violence. Jalen's life, her love for her children, her community, and her family should not be overshadowed by this horrific crime. Her legacy can and will inspire change, so long as we listen, act, and push for the reforms that will save lives. What do you think could have been done to stop this tragedy? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you believe justice for Jalin needs to be heard, like, share, and subscribe for more stories that must be told. Remember, sharing these stories can spark the change we need to protect others from experiencing the same heartache. Until next time, remember, no one should ever suffer in silence. If you or someone you know is in danger, speak up, reach out, and never hesitate to ask for help. Resources are in the description of this video. Domestic violence is not just a personal issue, it's a community issue. Stay safe, stay aware, and thank you for joining us today. See you on another story from the Hidden Crime Network. Bye for now.